Brothers and sisters, stop for a moment. There is a danger greater than sin itself looming over us all. It is not an epidemic, not a war, not an economic crisis. It is something more insidious, more hidden, yet present everywhere. We are experiencing it right now, at this very moment, and perhaps we do not even realize it. But Fulton Sheen, with his prophetic voice, left us a warning that we cannot ignore. Who was Fulton Sheen? Archbishop, tireless preacher, author of enlightening books, and a television figure who touched millions of souls. A man who, with his wisdom and unwavering faith, spoke to the world's conscience like few others in recent history. His words were not only eloquent, but filled with eternal truth, capable of piercing the darkness of error and making the light of Christ shine. The Church recognized the holiness of his life by declaring him Venerable in 2012, an important step toward beatification. This title confirms the depth of his faith and the extraordinary impact of his ministry, recognized not only by the faithful but by the Church itself as a model of Christian virtue to follow. And today, I want to share with you one of his powerful messages, a message that concerns us all, a message that sounds like a wake-up call for our lives, and that we must listen to in full because it is urgent and speaks directly to each of us.
There is something rotten in the world, and that rot is so radical and universal that it cannot be explained by things, but by a spirit, the spirit of evil. It is our blindness that prevents us from seeing that evil exists because we have denied its existence. A man without eyes can be convinced that night is day and day is night. Likewise, the modern world, having lost both the eyes of faith and those of reason, can be led to believe that the spirit of the Antichrist is not here because it has forgotten Christ. Who will convince them that there is an Antichrist? Men think that evil must come in the form of a germ, or a bomb, or an accident, or an explosion, or a railway disaster, or a bank failure, forgetting that the greatest evil can come to man disguised as human thoughts and ideas. It is under the mask and disguise of progress that denies sin and guilt that the Antichrist parades through the world today, sits in our classrooms, writes in our magazines, struts across our stages, promising to redeem man once he has abandoned the cross and penance. When a civilization sins and denies its sin, it becomes necessary for God to make it feel the effects of sin. How does he make them feel the effects of sin? With a tremendous crisis. In times when faith was more alive, people sinned as they do today, but they knew they were sinning. They broke God's law but admitted it, considered it just, and knew that the only way back was not to justify sin, but to confess it and do penance. When a civilization sins and denies its sin, it becomes necessary for God to make it feel the effects of sin. This is why we are so worried and anxious. Divorces, murders, atheistic education, carnal sins, slander, and selfishness. All these sins are committed with great ease so that our world may realize how far it has strayed from the foundations of God's life. How does he make them feel the effects of sin? With a tremendous crisis. Just as ruined health in body and mind is the result of alcoholism and a broken family is the moral consequence of infidelity and divorce, so chaos and disorder are the historical result of a civilization without God. God does not arbitrarily send disasters upon us, but rather, disasters result from the violation of God's law. Just as thunder follows lightning and ignorance stems from laziness. God created the world in such a way that sin produces certain effects, and these chaotic moments in our current history are, in a way, the manifestation of God's judgment on our way of living. Every true follower of Christ knows that they must be hated. We must be hated as Christ himself was hated. We must be insulted as Christ himself was insulted. We must be prepared to hear, in every possible way, that we are ignorant because we do not know that higher biblical criticism has supposedly destroyed the authenticity of the Holy Scriptures. That we are narrow-minded because we refuse to accept certain immoral interpretations of God's law. That we are a race of obscurantists because evolution has supposedly proven that original sin is nothing but a myth. That we are ignorant because we do not realize that science has supposedly done away with providence, with God, with Christ. Yes, we are ignorant of the false wisdom of the world, ignorant of the so-called wisdom of our time, ignorant of all that false knowledge that seeks to dazzle and blind us, preventing us from seeing the radiant truths of the eternal Son. We are ignorant of the ways of the modern world. O Heavenly Father, who art in heaven, we thank you for allowing us to be ignorant of those things that lead us away from you. It is not the wisdom of the world that saves, but ignorance of it.
Fulton Sheen leaves us no escape. The greatest danger is not the sin we can see, but the denial of its very existence. The world today tells us that we do not need God, that sin is an outdated concept, and that we can live however we please without consequences. But this is the great deception. Now, more than ever, we must heed this message, because evil is among us, disguised as progress, modernity, and false freedom. We must choose whether to follow the world or remain faithful to Christ, even if it costs us hatred and misunderstanding. And you, are you ready to accept the challenge? Are you ready to choose Christ and the truth even when the whole world tells you that you are wrong? Do not stay silent. Share this message with those you love, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more content that can awaken your faith and your soul. Together, we can resist. Together, we can remain faithful to Christ.